Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness and another playlist for Level by Level. And this time around, we're going over the Presence discipline, which is, in my opinion, so much more of a dangerous version of Dominate. This one does not affect the mind, it affects the emotions. It's so much more invasive when you stop and think about it, because regardless of whether or not you're being mind controlled, you still have control over your emotions and over your own faculties and what you want. But with this, it completely removes your ability of choice when it comes to desire. It makes you a slave to your own emotions and a slave to the individual who's controlling said emotions. So this one has gained some very interesting nicknames. We've got Superstardom, Enthrallment, and Sublimatus. And I think Sublimatus, although it does sound kind of weird, it is probably one of the more accurate versions because it is so subliminal. Unlike, like I was saying, comparing it to Dominate before, where you walk up and say, you will forget this. You are going to do this. Go do this thing. Sit, stay. Where those can be mentally draining, the emotional damage that Presence can do to you, it's disturbing. Now, when we stop and think about Presence, what clans come to mind? The Brujah have Presence. They practice Presence. They are auditory workers. They convince people to go and fight their battles for them. They rouse up their armies. We've got the Toreador. The Toreador are probably the best known clan for really laying in deep into this discipline and using it to get what they want. The Ventru not only have the powers of Dominate, but they have the powers of Presence to come on more like the Silk Glove over the Force Hammer. The Ministry, the Setites, the followers of Set, they also practice this because encouraging people to do things that they typically would not do, to try things that they would typically not try, that is the keystone to the Ministry. The Ravno. The Ravno in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition has been given the ability to use Presence. In fact, it is a mix of Presence and Offuscate, which comes together to create their chimerical gifts. Then we also have the minor bloodlines, the Bali classically practiced Presence, the Daughters of Cacophony, the Garuhi, which are a African Laoban offshoot of Clan Nosferatu, the Impundulu, which are another strange necromantic, possibly Cappadocian offshoot from South Africa, the Ishtare, which are again Laoban version of the Toreador, who practice both dance and battle. The Talavaic Tremere, which were a pagan Lithuanian branch of Clan Tremere, who practiced the arts of Presence over Dominate. The practice of Presence is just covered by a variety of individuals. The book states, most vampires are creatures of grace and lethality, associated with horrific violence and devastating beauty. Kindred embody opposites, alternating between nightmare and dream, depending on the onlooker and the vampire's whims. Presence is a discipline that expresses this bipolar existence. Used to attract victims or disperse them in fear, Presence allows crowd control, emotional manipulation, and enforced devotion. A mortal's greatest fear could stand before them and suddenly look like the most radiant creature on earth. Many Presence practitioners use this discipline to easily acquire feeding vessels, while others use it to stalk the night as creatures of horror, making weak-willed kind flee terrified, unsure of what they have just seen. Effective as a lure as well as a defense, vampires with Presence enjoy an easier nightlife, at the expense of forgetting what feelings projected at them are normal and which are compelled. Now, I really love the way that things are put in V5 when it comes to presence, because in older system, aside from the gift of dread gaze, which was literally bringing your vampiric self to the surface and presenting it to someone violently and forcing them to run away, presence was always a worship me style of discipline. With V5, they have now taken it so that a good amount of presence disciplines, and we'll cover each of them one by one, has almost an evil opposite, which I love the idea of the vampire who can be the nightmare or be the dream. That really is something that calls to me due to the fact that they've always been just the dream when they practice this discipline, except for that one exception of Dreadgaze. Also, the idea that the vampire loses the ability to realize who actually cares about them and who is just being compelled by their powers. That's tragic. That really does show you what kind of person you might actually end up if you over-practice this power. And I think that's something that storytellers need to take into consideration when they notice somebody using it constantly. Perhaps some type of willpower check to be able to remember whether or not they had actually used presence on this individual. Does the character really want to just be in control of everything and not actually know who truly cares for them? The characteristics of this discipline state: presence affects the emotions of those subjected to it, not the minds. While this is useful in that victims are cognizant, unlike dominate, they are not under the direct control of the user and are thus often unpredictable. In order to be affected by presence, the subject must be in the physical presence of the user, or at least within earshot. The discipline does not transmit electronically unless the user possesses star magnetism, which is a level 5 presence gift. Detecting the use of presence is very hard unless one has access to sense the unseen Auspex level 1, and can even then be too subtle to notice unless one is looking for it specifically. Presence power effects do not stack, so someone using awe or entrancement on the same subject would only add their presence rating once for any social-based persuasion rolls. In combat, only the Dread Gaze and Majesty powers have any effect, as charm is of little use when someone has decided they want to hurt you. The details in that are so very important. I never would have considered that Auspex level 1 Sense the Unseen could see the effects of presence. And again, it's only if you know what you're looking for and looking for it specifically. And I'm assuming that would mean the shift in changes in the color of the aura of the victim, or possibly spikes of emotion that are visible. That is important to understand. I also like the fact that it points out that other than Dread Gaze and Majesty, using this in combat is kind of pointless, because some of these powers, such as awe, make it so that people notice you, and if somebody's swinging at you they notice you already. The type of discipline for this is mental. I would have actually pinned it as a social discipline, but I can also understand the mental reasons for this. The Masquerade threat is low to medium. A subtle power people seldom realize presence affected them at all. As with most disciplines, its higher levels can leave puzzled witnesses behind, especially once the effects wear off. Eventually somebody's going to go, I would not have done that. They had to have drugged me. Something had to have been done to me to make me do things like that. Blood resonance is sanguine. Now, sanguine. The beautiful and lustful. Those completely infatuated with the vampire. Models and actors and movie stars. Compelling public and private speakers. From politicians to car salesmen. YouTube sensations and Instagram influencers. These are your targets. These are the people that you're going to want to drink from that are going to acclimate your blood to the presence discipline. So, and as always, we'll go over the different effects of the humor that we're talking about. And sanguine being the humor, the element of air is its association. And that is due to air's involvement in inspiration. The Jungian function is sensation, so touch, feeling, being able to physically enjoy a sensation. The hormone is testosterone or estrogen. These are the sex hormones. So this is going to be something that affects that. And then the emotions and conditions are going to be horny, happy, addicted, active, flighty, and enthusiastic. These all really do make sense when you think about presence. When you think about the sanguine, the fact that the Toreador clan are known as the sirens, or that the Brujah clan has the ability to bubble up those emotions to get someone in the mood, enthusiastic, to actually be active. The Ventru has this wonderful ability to get people to do what they want. And an addictive or a happy feeling may very well be that. Now, of course, we can't deny that addicted also is going to be something that relates closely with the ministry and their practices. So if you've got sanguine, strangely enough, all of these different resonances have multiple disciplines that they tend to affect, at least two. And the other discipline that is affected by sanguine is blood sorcery. And I think that has more along the lines to do with the enthusiasm and the air quality that the elements actually play a part in, is that inspiration, that spark of imagination. So the idea that blood sorcery is connected to it in that sense does make a lot of sense to me. So, presence. That is what we're on right now. I am interested in knowing your take on the way this discipline has worked in your game. Does this seem to come off as a hammer? Or does it come to slightly lead individuals in the direction that you want them to be? What are the best examples of presence being used in a game that you've seen thus far? A lot of the times the discipline of presence in my game has been used by Dawn, the Ravno. Unfortunately, she uses it entangled with her chemistry abilities. So the actual uses were not that prominent. Even when they were used, they're subtle, as they should be. I am Voivode Maquette. This is Our World of Darkness, and this is Level by Level, our presence playlist. And I will see you in the next one as we begin to go through the different powers that this discipline grants its users. Class dismissed.